Hey there, gamer! Welcome to another character build from D6 Damage. Today I'd like to introduce you to the Teamwork Summoner. Just for the purposes of this build, I'm using the original summoner, although pretty much everything I'm saying is going to apply whether you're using the original or the unchained version of the class. Also, Summoner is probably one of the most complicated classes, just in terms of all the things you need to keep up with. Because you're basically managing not just one character, but two. And your second character, you're basically going to need to change up their special abilities every level, which is a little bit more than I can really cover here and what I think is the ultimate optimized summoner Eidolon build. So anyway, as a summoner, you basically have an extra planar buddy to hang out with you called your Eidolon. This basically functions as an additional character. Now, there are lots of different ways you can play this class, but I think a really interesting way to do it is to focus on teamwork feats, because your Eidolon gets feats. But let's start at the beginning, with class. Obviously, you're a summoner, and the race that I would recommend, at least for this build, is Half-Elf. Because Half-Elf gets a really good bonus to the summoner class. Every 4 levels, you get an additional evolution point. Now, more evolution points means a more powerful Eidolon. It's also important to know that the summoner, unlike a lot of casters, is quite a bit tougher. They're more along the lines of a cleric. They have a d8 hit die, and the mid-tier base attack bonus. So you can actually stand up in hand-to-hand combat, unlike sorcerers and wizards who really should be out of the fray. Alright, now let's talk about your stats. For this one, the summoner and the Eidolon are really meant to be sharing HP, so I wanted to go as much into the casting power as possible. And that means having a high charisma score. So that should be your primary stat. Now, as a half-elf, you get a +2 to put anywhere you want. I recommend putting that +2 in charisma. Now, because you're going to be fighting in melee combat, I recommend your second stat should be strength. Finally, a dexterity bonus is a prerequisite for some of these feats. So dexterity should be your third stat. Now, a great feature of the half-elf is one of your alternative racial traits lets you select either an exotic or martial weapon proficiency. And I'm going to recommend that you take the martial weapon proficiency with the Nodachi. This is an absolutely fantastic two-handed weapon. It does both slashing and piercing damage, plus a d10. It has an 18 to 20 crit range. So if at some point you can get a keen to Nodachi, great weapon to have. And I recommend you have a Cestus as a backup weapon, because that does blunt damage and you're just going to be covered for all damage types. And hey, if you want to do something like a Cold Iron Cestus, even better. Alright, so with your Eidolon, especially if you're doing the original summoner version, the Eidolon can really be anything. And to be honest, it doesn't matter that much whether you're going with a biped, a quadruped, or the serpent version. But again, just for the purpose of this build, I went with a biped. And that affects things like your beginning stats and your saving throws. But with all of them, the principle of this build is going to be the same. Because the only part which matters that much are the feats that you give your Eidolon. Your Eidolon gets a feat at 1st level, another feat at 3rd level, an additional feat at 6th level, and a 4th feat at 9th level. And it carries on from there. You get a max of 8 feats with your Eidolon. The first 4 feats I recommend are number 1, Toughness. This is just a good general feat to have. It gives you an additional 3 hit points for the first 3 hit die. And then after that, it gives you an additional 1 hit point per hit die. Eidolons have a d10 hit die, by the way. And unfortunately, no, they don't get a hit die every level. Now, for your summoner at level 1, I recommend you take the feat Extra Evolution. This gives you an additional evolution point. Next, when your Eidolon and your summoner reach 3rd level, I recommend you take the Teamwork feat Precise Strike. This feat has a couple of prereqs. First, you need a dexterity score of 13 or higher, and you need a base attack bonus of +1. Both you and your Eidolon should have that covered, no problem. Basically, what this feat does is whenever you and an ally who has this feat are flanking the same creature, you do an additional 1d6 points of damage with each successful melee attack. And this damage would stack with sneak attack, although, that's not really applicable to you. Alright, now things get a little odd, and you're going to need to wait a couple of levels to use some of your abilities, but just bear with it. Once your summoner gets to level 5, take the feat Extra Evolutions. Again, this will give you another evolution point, always good to have. When the Eidolon gets to level 6, take the Teamwork feat Outflank, even though you won't be able to use it yet. The prerequisite for Outflank is having a base attack bonus of +4. By the time the Eidolon and the Summoner can take it, they're both good. What this feat does is that when you and a buddy with this feat are flanking the same creature, your to-hit bonus increases by 2. That'll give you a +4 to hit. Alright, so obviously when your Summoner gets to level 7, take Outflank. It'll all be good. Alright, level 9. For the Summoner, take Summoner's Call. Basically, what this means is when you do your 1-minute long ritual to summon your Eidolon, for 10 minutes, you can give your Eidolon a bonus to one of its base ability scores. Either Strength, Dexterity, or Constitution. So that's either more health, more AC, or more damage. Dealer's choice, and I think it's definitely something you should think about doing. Now, other than the 2 teamwork feats I mentioned, I can't really think of any that I think would be super beneficial to this build. So for your Eidolon's 4th feat, I just say take Dodge. +1 to AC. Not a bad use of a feat. Alright, now let's talk about your spells. The Summoner does not really have a great spell list, unfortunately, although they do get some fairly interesting abilities. Okay, so a spell you should definitely have is Life Conduit. This allows you to, as a swift action, share 1d6 hit points between you and your Eidolon. So you can either take it from the Summoner and give it to the Eidolon, or from the Eidolon and give it to the Summoner. This spell lasts for 1 round per level. So cast it at the beginning of a fight, and you can kind of move those hit points around as needed. Now obviously you want a mainstay like Mage Armor, which isn't necessarily going to be helpful to the Summoner because you can wear armor, and I recommend that you do so, but it's invaluable to the Eidolon. A really interesting feature about the Summoner is that the Eidolon doesn't heal hit points. The only way to do it is with a spell that only Summoners get called Rejuvenate Eidolon. At level 1, you can only take Rejuvenate Eidolon Lesser, but what this does is it heals 1d10 points of damage to your Eidolon +1 per caster level, maximum of +5. And this is why you want as many spells as possible to keep your Eidolon in the fight as long as possible. Alright, now here's just a classic, Protection From. Depending on the situation, take Protection from Evil, Protection from Chaos, Protection from Law. You basically need to pick what you want to be protected from when you go into your campaign. And that's just about knowing your DM, knowing what they like, or kind of knowing what's going to be in the module you're playing. Although you can never really go wrong with Protection from Evil. Alright, once you get to the 2nd level spells, I highly recommend Create Pit. It's kind of a dumb power, where you create an extra dimensional pit, and your opponents fall into it. But you know what? It is very effective, and it's just a lot of fun. I recommend Create Pit. It's great. Also think about taking Bark Skin. This gives either the Summoner or the Eidolon an additional bonus to their natural armor. Invisibility. It's a great way to sneak up on people. Blur. Blur gives attacks a miss chance. It's not as good as Displacement, but you know, any chance of an attack just not hitting is a good thing. Alright, 3rd level, obviously you want the better version of Rejuvenate Eidolon. Stone Skin is also fantastic, because what that gives you is DR, unless of course your opponent has adamantine weapons which will bypass Stone Skin. Basically what the spell does is it absorbs damage, and there's a set amount that it can absorb based on your caster level. Then there's Invisibility Greater, which can be very helpful because you can attack while invisible, and you do get bonuses for attacking while invisible. Alright, at level 4, I recommend Dismissal just because it's a really good spell to have, especially if you're going up against outsiders. And Transmogrify. This allows you to kind of on the fly change up what your Eidolon's evolutions are, which really gives them a lot of situational flexibility. Alright, let's end with just kind of talking about the tactics of this character. Basically, the whole idea is just the Summoner and the Eidolon getting on either side of an opponent and just kind of ripping them apart. By the time you're around level 8 or so, you'll both have lots of bonuses to hit and bonuses to damage. And this character is also really good with combat maneuvers like Aid Another. Basically, this is where you're either distracting or grabbing onto an opponent so your buddy has an easier time hitting him. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the Teamwork Summoner build from D6 Damage. If you're interested in more character builds, class analysis, or gaming videos, be sure and check out D6 Damage right here on YouTube. Thank you for watching.